Hey, how's it going everyone, and welcome to yet another YouTube Investigator. I'm your host Sam Davis, and today we're going to be having a look at the most notorious figure in YouTube. It's the CEO, Susan Wojcicki. This is pretty ballsy of me to go after the CEO of YouTube. I realize it could jeopardize my channel and this series in its entirety, but I feel like it'd be so stupid of me not to go after the worst problem with YouTube right now. I really think this person is holding back YouTube as it is, and I think YouTube could be a much better platform and an amazing place for content creators if she was not the CEO. So today I'm going to explain why this CEO of YouTube is a disaster and why she should be stopped and be taken off as the CEO of YouTube. I'm going to run through some points as to why Susan Wojcicki is not a good CEO and why she is terrible for YouTube. She is just a shocking person to have running YouTube, and I think that she is very corrupt in the way she handles YouTube problems and the way she runs YouTube as a whole. So Susan Wojcicki was appointed in the tenure of CEO of YouTube in 2014. Now, for her first 3 years in the position, no one had a huge problem with her. The YouTube community were going on as they were. Obviously, everyone had a problem with the copyright problems going on with YouTube, and a few other issues which were annoying everyone who were trying to make YouTube content, including me. But people weren't really pointing out Susan specifically for those problems back then. Well, not to my knowledge at least. It wasn't until 2017 when the adpocalypse happened was when Susan was really called a terrible CEO. Obviously, when the adpocalypse happened, it was a huge disaster for YouTube, and Susan was determined to fix this by making sure that YouTubers weren't going to lose heaps of money. Unfortunately, her main priority though was bigger YouTubers and not the smaller ones that were really suffering on YouTube. Now I'm going to go through what I think are the worst issues of Susan Wojcicki. Now these might not be the most well-known ones or the ones that everyone has pointed out over and over on YouTube. These are just the ones I think are the worst of the worst and why she should be removed as the CEO of YouTube. I think it's a disaster when she actively promotes creators like Lele Pons, who makes children's content, which isn't children's content at all, by the way. Nerd City made an amazing video which came out of January this year where he basically showed Lele to be a complete fraud and a terrible person, as well as a very poor content creator. I'll admit, I actually followed Lele Pons on Vine when I was 14 and I watched all her Vines. Back then, she was definitely a much different content creator and she didn't look anything like she does now. And I actually enjoyed her content back then, believe it or not. Nowadays though, she is a disaster and Susan Wojcicki can't even see that, as she actively tries to promote her channel in the means of making money for YouTube and Lele. Now, a lot of YouTubers have fallen into this disastrous trap of being memed to death after they get a photo with Susan Wojcicki, or they just have a video called Meeting Up with the CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki. This is a disaster, a complete PR disaster for their channels, as they soon realize that everyone knows that they're getting favoritism from Susan and special treatment from her. Basically, inviting Susan onto their channel brings them in her good books, and they never really get in trouble for a while. Susan will go, "I like you," and then she'll decide to promote their channels. I'm not saying meeting up with Susan is against the law of YouTubers, but I'm saying that it is a PR disaster for your channel if you decide to do this. Like, people will literally know that you're trying to get in her good books so that your channel gets monetized for all your videos, no matter how ridiculous and unage appropriate your videos are. One of these infamous YouTuber meetups was H3H3 getting this photo with Susan Wojcicki. Keemstar was interested in sharing this photo on his Twitter and talking about Ethan, obviously because he doesn't like H3H3, but at the same time, this photo does raise a lot of questions. And it definitely did raise a lot of questions when around the same time, Gokanaru's video, The Death of H3H3 Productions, was deleted from the platform. I'll get to that in a moment. Now, after doing my video on anything for views, I decided to segue that into this conversation that Anything for Views and Max Mofo had on their Cold Ones podcast a year ago. They spoke about the now deceased rapper Juice WRLD talking with Susan Wojcicki, and Susan basically buttering him up, saying that she'll promote all of his stuff on YouTube and basically make sure that his YouTube channel will get extra growth.
You know how we spoke about getting your subscribers up? She's the big boss of it all.
Oh,
so
yeah.
this is the real, this is the whole thing.
I know. How can we help you? You're so talented. We gotta get your subscriber numbers way up. We're gonna make it happen. All right?
Right around here? Yeah,
We're here. We're here for you. However we can. You have no
This is obviously incredibly rich as everyone else is getting destroyed. All of the smaller content creators who make brilliant content are getting destroyed at the same time she is actively promoting someone who is already very famous. It's obviously very sad to talk about this specific instance as Juice WRLD has now passed away, but it's an example of how Susan favorites people who don't really need the recognition as much as people who are smaller on YouTube. But of course, rest in peace, Juice WRLD. Another thing Chad and Max talked about on their Cold Ones podcast in the same conversation was how she allegedly met up with James Charles and claimed that she would put his videos on recommended if he wished, and that he would get promoted if he really wanted to on the platform. Of course, you'd suspect that he would accept this offer, who wouldn't, and a video he made that was really bizarre and quite boring called Making My Own Starbucks Pinkety Drinkety, which was suspiciously different to all of his other content's views at the time, and after only 4 days had 10 million views. This is bizarre because after 2 months it had 16 million views.
James Charles made a Starbucks drink.
Literally just a pink drink.
4 days
views.
and it had 10 million views.
Bro.
It was making a custom Starbucks
Question
drink.
here.
You'd expect a video which after 4 days had 10 million views go to something like 70 or 80 million views after 2 months.
Instead of reaching out to people going like, hey, I know you're an animator, I know how much work goes into your videos, we're going to help you, we're going to put you in recommended, we're going to promote your videos. Instead of going to people like that, they go, hey James, oh man, nice $10 million merch you got here. We're going to put you in recommended more often.
So you get 10 million views in 2 days.
One of the gripes Max and Chad had with this, which I completely agree with, is that she doesn't understand that people that actually work hard deserve to be promoted much more than James Charles does because he is already a popular YouTuber. Their gripe is that Susan doesn't even understand that the smaller channels need to be in the recommended more and need the special treatment just as much as the bigger channels do. But favoritism is a disaster in life. I had a teacher who favorited certain students and gave them special treatment, and everyone didn't like that teacher by the end of the year. What I'm saying is you should never do this if you're in a commanding position or if you're in an authoritative position. This is just a complete disaster and makes everyone on the platform dislike you. Except the one you favorited, of course. Now, the infamous H3H3 meetup with Susan Wojcicki wouldn't have really become infamous if it wasn't for Gokanaru's video, The Death of H3H3 Productions Video Vigilante, being taken down around the same time. Sorry about the magpies in the background. This obviously raised a lot of suspicions as we saw that Ethan in his podcast had been searching up Gokanaru and The Death of H3H3 Productions in his search history on video. This all happened around the same time frame he met up with Susan Wojcicki, and The Death of H3H3 Productions was deleted from YouTube.
By doing a little bit of research with help from Bedhead Bernie, we were able to figure out that Susan visited H3 on April 18th, 2019, the same day that she visited James Charles and Shane Dawson, judging by her outfit. This means that between the Gus Johnson podcast, where you can see I was in his history, and Susan visiting them, there was only 8 days.
Now, I know the Leafy Content Cop was also deleted on the exact same day, and this was just considered ridiculous and hypocritical of YouTube compared to all of the other things that were around on YouTube at the time that were still able to stay up on the platform. I mentioned in the last video of YouTube Investigator the hypocrisy with porn on YouTube and how that's able to stay up. But the Video Vigilante one was especially ridiculous, as it was clearly suspicious that H3H3 was telling Susan to delete this video and was wanting special treatment from her. This led to a huge PR disaster for H3H3 and the brand of the H3 podcast.
Massive conspiracy. Baseless, insane conspiracy theories about me.
So you really think that Susan, the CEO of YouTube, came here to meet us to talk about you and another guy that made a video about us?
No, I think that Susan, the CEO of YouTube, went there to meet you to talk about creator-on-creator harassment, just as Susan herself says. Right here, in her letter to creators last April.
Obviously, in the past, Susan has destroyed the recommendations of channels like Leafy. Maybe wasn't a complete disaster, the Leafy one. But of course, certain YouTubers that slander her, and this might happen to my channel, who knows, she's obviously more interested in not having them as recommended channels on the platform. Now, this is where I get to my Cold Ones conspiracy. Cold Ones is a podcast, as I've mentioned earlier in the video, on YouTube, hosted by Anything for Views and Max Mofo. The podcast podcast was created after the Anything for Views channel had about 730 or 750,000 subscribers, around then. It was morphed into Cold Ones, and Anything for Views started a new channel separate to Cold Ones. The problem I have is that the channel has only gained 110,000 odd subscribers since they did this morphing about roughly 14 or 15 months ago. This is insanely low for a podcast as good as this. You would expect it to get way more subscribers over that period of time and just be a way more popular podcast than it currently is in terms of subscribers. My theory is that Susan Wojcicki herself has figured out or has been told that these guys are slandering her on their podcast, and she's just decided instead of terminate their account because they're big YouTubers, she'll just lower the recommendations of their podcast. I don't think Cold Ones is recommended anywhere on YouTube outside of the people already subscribed to the channel. This is just insane, and after only like 2 months for this channel to only get about 3,000 or 4,000 subscribers, believe me, I've been looking at the subscribers over the last month and it's only gone up about 3,000. I think this channel isn't being recommended anywhere on YouTube, and I think that's because of Susan Wojcicki herself. I know it's a big claim, but that's just a theory, a game theory. Good God. Now, before I get to the end, obviously the biggest thing that's been talked about to do with Susan Wojcicki and YouTube's dirty little secret, a video by Gokanaru that was recently one of the best commentary videos released last year. He goes into detail to say that YouTube silenced Monkey Jones when he released his Elliot Rodgers series. YouTube claimed that it was all about promoting violence, when really Monkey Jones made that series to show people why they should never stoop this low to what Elliot Rodgers stooped to, and should never become an Elliot Rodger themselves. Now, mentioning this name isn't really a big thing of mine. This guy got into controversy for a really horrible thing, a massacre actually. And Monkey Jones's content, I will admit, isn't the greatest look for his channel and isn't the greatest idea, because of course that content can easily be deleted, but his entire channel being deleted is just a joke. I'm not sure if his channel was reinstated or if he started up a new channel, but there is a Monkey Jones-like channel that's on YouTube right now that has uploads from 3 years ago. So maybe YouTube responded to this backlash and just reinstated his channel. Who knows? I think deleting this specific channel though was one of YouTube's biggest disasters of 2019, and I think that is a huge disgrace that they would silence a YouTuber who's just trying to tell the truth. The deletion of this channel has just been a huge issue, and if you want to hear more about it, go to Gokanaru's video. Gokanaru is the one who knows a lot about this issue and has been researching the hell out of it for that specific video, so definitely check out his video. To finish up this long YouTube Investigator, the longest one I've ever made, I think, I reckon Susan Wojcicki is the most corrupt CEO going around. I'd say she's more like a dictator than a CEO, someone who favorites specific people and gives them special credit and tries to make money for the YouTube platform through favoriting these specific people. She picks and chooses the people she likes on YouTube and then promotes them and leaves all the smaller and hard-working channels in the dead. Animation channels that work extremely hard on great content, channels like Colossal is Crazy and Nerd City who make great content and far less videos, they don't get any kind of treatment from Susan. Not saying they deserve special treatment themselves from Susan, but smaller channels in general deserve special treatment more than these specific massive YouTubers that she's given treatment to. I think the worst thing to come out of this is the H3H3 Productions disaster, and I think Susan Wojcicki should be deleted as the CEO from YouTube. She should find a new job at Burger King and seriously just off and just stop having anything to do with YouTube, because she is a disaster when it comes to this platform. Look, I really hope this video about Susan Wojcicki's antics and about her terrible run as a CEO doesn't get my channel demonetized completely or worse, deleted, but I felt like I should make this video so people understand and know just how horrible a CEO she is.
Was Logan Paul, and I'm using him as an example of just awfulness on your platform. Why don't you just, you have explain what you've done, and I'd really like to understand why you haven't absolutely kicked him off your platform.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. A new YouTube Investigator will be released when I find a topic that I deem extremely worthy of being talked about on this series. Otherwise, be sure to check out my other series, Internet Inspector, which has more episodes released more often, and other series on the channel coming up. Thank you very much. I'm Sam Davis, and this has been YouTube Investigator.